Welcome everyone today to the Reuters webinar on Find Friction and Fix It, Earn Loyalty and Drive Retention. We have four terrific panelists that are joining us today, which I will introduce. We'll go into a quick background, and then the panelists will go through their experiences and we'll go through a Q&A. Just as a reminder, for those of you who are not familiar with Zoom, there is a question and answer function that will appear at the bottom of your screen. If you highlight over it, you'll be able to add questions and answers. So I highly recommend that you take advantage of the opportunity to be fully interactive and immersed by posting your questions. We will take the questions after the panelists go through their introductions. So with that, I will introduce each of the panelists. First, we have Tim, who is the VP of Underwriting Operations and Strategy at The Hanover. And we have Meredith, VP of Industry Groups at Usher. And Bill, SVP, Head of Underwriting U.S. National Accounts at Zurich North America. And last but certainly not least is Jasmine, VP of Enterprise Customer Solutions and Enablement at Nationwide. So you can really see we have across the gamut of P&C, from personal lines to commercial lines, and from people that have experience in underwriting and claims, all the different points where you could see friction and have opportunities to earn loyalty. And for those of you who are not familiar with me, I'm David Gritz, Managing Director of InsurTech New York. So for our topic today, really what we're thinking about for friction is the concept of acquiring new customers versus keeping existing ones. And actually data shows that it's 9 times more expensive to acquire a new customer versus keeping an existing one. And with stats like that, it's no wonder that retention is becoming rapidly in the insurance industry's top priority. Carriers must identify their friction points early and strategize to resolve problems now, or risk losing a customer at any stage of the relationship. So with that, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to share their experiences on the topic for finding friction and fixing it, and use this as an opportunity to think about questions that you might want to get answered based off of what they've shared. So Tim, I'll give you the opportunity to start things off.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I've been at this for about 25 years now, and this friction point that I've seen over and over again, no matter which company I work for, and I've worked for a variety of companies, is the inspection, the inspection friction point, where we send out a vendor to inspect or evaluate a customer's home. And whether it's because the vendor wasn't timely or the vendor, whatever the situation was, there's been a friction point there. And that can sometimes cause us to lose a customer. So one of the things that we did here at The Hanover, which isn't unlike other companies, I'll admit, but we decided that, especially on our high value business, which we're starting to delve into, we call it Prestige, that product there, it's coverage age greater than $1 million and above. We've decided to utilize a different tool, which is what we call our Hanover Risk Control Consultant, or a company inspector, if you will, for lack of a better term. And what that has been able to provide for us is a way better customer experience. The customer experience is, I had the opportunity to go out with our risk control consultant in Connecticut. And we went to this home. I like to tell stories, by the way, so I'll tell a quick story. I went to this home, and the gentleman that was the risk control consultant met with the customer, an older gentleman, and introduced himself beautifully. I had all the Hanover garb on. We both looked pretty good, if I don't say so myself. And we talked with the customer about what we were going to do. And then we went through the house, and this risk control consultant was an expert. He could pinpoint things in the house. Like, for instance, he saw a rug that was a special kind of rug. I'll call it a Tim Delahunt rug, right? And he said, wow, that's a beautiful rug. And the customer's like, wow, yeah, you knew that? That's great. He also identified an issue at the gentleman's home, of a potential water leak. And he was able to identify that, show him what needed to be done. And he was able to help the customer take care of that right on the spot. And so I think we probably have a customer for life because of that. In fact, we got an email back from that customer later saying, thank you so much for your professionalism and how you were able to handle that particular issue. I've already got it fixed, and thank you so much. So I think that friction point has really kind of been identified, and over again, we've started to expand this program countrywide, and we're just getting great kudos from it. So that's just one example of the friction point that we identified and what we did about it.
Yeah, Tim, I can really appreciate that experience. You know, if you get to know your customers and really understand what's in their home, it's definitely an opportunity not just to identify potential losses before they happen, but also to solidify your relationship. So like that point, and of course, if you're going to visit a customer, might as well dress sharp.
Yeah, that's right.
So Meredith, do you want to share your experiences?
Absolutely. So again, Meredith Barnes-Cook, I'm the industry leader at Usher, and I've been in the industry now for 36 years. I spent 33 years at Liberty Mutual, where I had the opportunity. I started off in claims and had the opportunity, by just continually saying yes to new things that came up, had a chance to actually work across the full insurance life cycle in all lines of business. So really exciting. I really got to understand I always said, I learned the most about claims by spending 10 years in product and underwriting, because I understood the claims value proposition from a different lens, and I spent time with loss prevention and managed care. And one of the commonalities that I saw, that now that I'm at Usher, where we're working across the the entire insurance industry, along with healthcare and banking, is, you know, there's the customer friction, or the opportunity to really, Matt Dixon's The Effortless Experience is such a great point of view of, we spend so much time talking about trying to delight the customer with a superior experience. But, you know, the whole premise of the book is, the studies show repeatedly, what earns customer loyalty is ease. It's elimination of effort. And what we find, you know, the reality is the insurance customer experiences the insurance relationship kind of one interaction at a time. You know, they request something or they're asked to provide something. It's these interactions, or what we call these micro engagements. And some of the most high value things that companies can improve on are incredibly not sexy. They're not the sparkly, bedazzly things. They're the basic things that happen over and over again. You know, we talk to people in call centers, and I lived this, you know, back in my former life. You know, the highest driver of calls into the call center, beyond reporting a new loss, are often status of, you know, when is my next payment due? When am I going to get my check? What's happening with the change that are requested on my policy? And, you know, some of our customers, and they focus on this kind of one interaction at a time, and how do you take out that friction at that interaction level, at that touch point level. One of our customers, they were buried in those calls. They offered claimants the opportunity to get claim status updates proactively via text. And they offered as an experiment, let's take this a few hours, push this out, see who leans in. And so many people leaned in so quickly, they saw an almost immediate 35% reduction in inbound calls. You know, it's like, well, that worked. You know, and so they're continuing on that journey. And so it was something that was so non-spectacular, but it was the thing that mattered to the customer in that moment. And that, to me, is what I really finding, is when I pull back, is there's so many of those moments, to just the ways to just one step to make it easy, because customers are not engaging with their insurance company saying, I am tailoring my service expectations because I'm talking to an insurance company. They're not. You know, they're saying, I'm engaging an entity that I pay money to for a product and a service, like any other entity I pay money to for a product and a service. And I have a certain level of expectations that I think we've all seen have elevated to a whole different level with the rapid consumerization of everything and the digital of everything that the pandemic pushed us all through. And that's not just a B2B scenario, it's a B2B scenario we're seeing as well.
Yeah, it's amazing that a simple text message of the status can lead to double-digit improvements in call center calls. So I think it really validates your point, Meredith, that high value is unsexy, and you just got to focus on what people need, that basic blocking and tackling. So we will go to Bill next.
Yeah, thanks, David. So Bill Chapoulis, head of underwriting for national accounts at Zurich North America. I've been with Zurich about 17 years, and I've spent 25 years in the financial services sector. So my background is a bit diverse. I've had roles across many of our businesses, from a CFO, CUO, COO. So I've seen this topic from a variety of different lenses. I think I agree with you wholeheartedly, David, around from a CFO position, the value of customer retention is unparalleled, right? I mean, it's lower acquisition cost, higher return on investment. No doubt from the chief underwriting officer perspective, it's understanding the needs of the customer. What do we need to provide? How do we make them better? And then as a COO, the challenge is how do you deliver, right? How do you deliver scalable, scalable services and experiences to the customers? I think it's a great topic because, coming off of the last 3 years, if you think about the market conditions, many carriers, all they had to do for customer retention is provide capacity, right? We came out of 3 years of an extremely hard market. The idea of the customer experience was somewhat put on hold because capacity in a lot of these lines was such a premium. As the market starts to transition, that will no longer be the case, and carriers need to come back and revisit projects and investments that were in process to really think about those value-added services to retain customers. I agree 100% with Meredith. I think about table stakes around the customer experience. I think about responsiveness, ease of doing business, quality of services provided. There's always room to improve on those. And to her point, every survey that goes out comes back with those factors as being key. We're thinking about it a step further in terms of, truly retain customers in today's market. We think you need to be able to provide incremental value back to the customer, back to the insured in exchange for their business. So how do you make them better risks? How can you lower their total cost of insurance? How can you make them more profitable and drive shareholder value for them? So two big priorities that I'd love to speak about is one, we see it from a relationship side, right? So can we, drive deeper relationships through products and services? Obviously, it's for us, it creates more stickiness for the customer, the more products and services we offer. But for the customer, it's an advantage because we can help them drive a solution that lowers their total cost of insurance, provides more products that makes them better insureds, better risks. So there is a win-win there. The second is around data and insights. I think, if you think about action-oriented insights, being able to harness the customer data, our data, the industry data, and being able to use that and bring something back to the customer that makes them better. So something scalable for us, it needs to be scalable, but for the customer, it needs to feel bespoke. And it's, we're looking at how we leverage, insights from our internal predictive models. So the way we look at the customer, how we price the business, how we assess risks, how can we take that data, bring it back, benchmark it, add more data to the pool, and bring back insights to make those customers better companies. So that's how we think about retention and some of the things that we're driving here at Zurich. But can't wait to hear more of the panelists.
Yeah, Bill, I can really appreciate the perspective there that you have to balance both offering something bespoke, but being able to have scalable data and analytics insights for your customers. And I think it's probably these days more of a rare than a normal perspective that your job is to reduce the total cost of insurance for your insured instead of just being a risk transfer vehicle. So also another strong perspective that hopefully we can continue and get into some more detail as the conversation continues. So Jasmine, I will pass it to you last.
Hi, thanks, Dave, for the offer to be here and share. Like Meredith, Bill, and Tim, I come with a wealth of experience. I've been with Nationwide. This is my 37th year with the company across claims, underwriting. Tim, I see you shaking your head there. Claims, underwriting, the call center. And I'll tell you, when I think about friction and fixing it at Nationwide, it goes back for me that adult age of feedback. We don't run from feedback. It's something that you want, and we have to do it. We look at it from a holistic perspective. It's not just in one particular area, but we bring a collaboration of people together and all of the organizations to look at the friction points. Because when you think about the journeys of customers, it could be agnostic regarding which area, which department, or which business unit the friction impacts. That same one piece of friction can impact 4 different areas or multiple areas. So we look at it holistically from the customer's perspective. We actually think, and how does this really impact our customers, sit in their shoes and fix it holistically, whether we bring in IT and some of the other areas. So I'll tell you, let's think about friction and add on friction, the changing of customers' dynamics nowadays, and then let's add on the pandemic. So let's go backwards before we go forwards. So thinking about the pandemic, and I just have to give a little props here for Nationwide. Prior to the pandemic, and when the pandemic happened, we were ready to go work from home. That's because we had looked at some of the friction points, and it's friction internally for associates as well as customers, because your associates are basically working with your customers, looking at it holistically from both perspectives. And we were able to go home from an associate perspective without friction, which allowed us to help our customers. And so we continue to connect those dots between the associate friction as well as the customer friction, and look at it holistically across all departments.
Yeah, Jasmine, I really like your perspective of thinking about the friction two-dimensionally, not just from your end policyholders, but also from the associates. And I think it's like the platinum rule, which is treat others the way that they want to be treated. And I think putting that holistic lens on it really gives you the ability to do one change and affect 4 different business units. Yeah, so we've had a number of questions come in from the audience. So I think we'll start with those, and then we prepared a number of questions, so we'll go through that sequence as well. So I think the starting point, there's a couple of questions that came in around making lifelong customers a big goal and being able to scale some of these individualized or personalized experiences. So maybe, Tim, if you want to start us off, the question was, can you train people to do the type of work that your premium risk consultants do, or is it more of a surprise and delight that you hope happens?
No, it's definitely a definitive way that we approached it, and it was definitely, as Jasmine mentioned, with the customer in mind. Like, what are the customers complaining about? What are the customers' needs? And I always go by this premise, by the way, that customers don't want to have a loss. They have a loss and they have insurance, but they don't want to have a loss. So what can I do to proactively help them to not to have a loss? And so we've looked into, different things like prevention, water sensors, and making sure that the customers know about that kind of information. And we add value by telling them about other devices that can potentially, save them from a fire loss. And those are the kinds of things that the customer then starts to think, boy, this isn't just about money with these guys. This is about really they care. And, and that's when people, I think, stick a little bit more, because even if our price is higher, it's not about the price. It's about this company cares because they did this and they did that. The other friction point I meant to mention before, because I said our high value customers have that friction point from an inspection perspective, but our lower value customers, that's a terrible way to say that, our customers who have a coverage of less than $1 million, we allow them to do self-evaluations, because again, vendors come in and there's all kinds of challenges. So we have upped our game with that. And about 50% of our exterior evaluations are done by the customer themselves. We push them an app, takes them about 10 minutes. It's less invasive. They don't have anybody coming into their house, and they're able to take care of things right away. And they've really loved that. The experience has been great there too. But certainly, again, I loved what Jasmine said. Oh, by the way, I can't believe she's been in the business for 37 years. That's why I was shaking my head. But yeah, absolutely look at it from the customer's perspective.
Great, thanks, Tim. I think it's really important to think that depending on the premium, you ultimately can adjust, but still personalize. So for the higher premium, you can have someone come out, but for the lower premium, you could exercise that same discipline with a self-assessment. And it's good to hear that that's been working out, because I know there's a lot of insurtechs that have tried variations of this, that have had medium versions of success. So maybe they should look to you guys as the kind of influencers in the space. So Meredith, I know that you've worked with a number of clients, both kind of internally and externally, on this perspective of scaling. What advice would you have for carriers that are just starting out from their perspective on how to scale some of these experiences? Oh, I think you're still on mute, Meredith.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think, one of the biggest challenges was really my own challenge in moving from my carrier role into this, agile, AI-powered customer experience automation platform role. Is I was part of agile transformations, but it was like agility where we were getting there, absolutely making great progress, but it's hard. It's hard when you have, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different policy admin systems and 10 claim systems and 5 call center solutions. And you're trying to, from really embrace that outside in lens, that customer first perspective, when on the back end, by absolute legitimate business design, especially the more, like I always said, the more technology sub ecosystems a carrier has, the more successful we've been, because we've acquired a lot of our competitors. We've grown through acquisition. It's a good thing. We may have multiple brands in play, bringing different products to market. And so that's all great, except for when the customer feels it. So, what we really have been, working with companies on is that concept of agility to build that one brand experience, but again, one interaction at a time. And not thinking about the traditional core system, the beginning of the process. We want to think about, how the customer's interacting. And so we're going to think about, we're going to begin in the policy side, we're going to start with the quoting journey. Is that the best place to start? Or do you start with your existing customers as opposed to maybe your prospects and say, how about the policy change process? I read so many blogs about, why is it so hard to add a new driver to my auto policy? And I absolutely understand, having been on the policy side, I understand why it's hard, but the customer shouldn't feel it. So maybe that's where you start. And, and you say, okay, so, if that works, if that digital self-service experience works and that customer resonates, go, what's the next one of those? If you've done that for auto, what's your next high volume? Is it, if you're a life carrier, is it a beneficiary changes or the validation process? Is that where you start? Or is it even just getting people ready? We've talked with companies about the premium audit journey, and premium audit's kind of like doing your taxes. I can't wait to go through the premium audit process, said no one ever. But it's a necessary, critical experience. And we've talked with carriers about, and this is very analogous actually to benefits enrollment, or what we might think about as customer onboarding. Just that reach out to say, that time of year is coming. You've wiped it from your memory, just like we do April 15th every year as individuals. This time of year is coming. The premium audit process is coming up. Here's the timeline. You just kind of get the schedule. Hey, could you please confirm this year who's our point of contact? But that tends to change year over year. And here's a preview of the documentation we're going to need. And if we've decided based on your risk, your size, this is going to be an on-site audit, why don't we go ahead and schedule that now? Because those are all individual subsequent moments of friction of who is the point of contact, and we're kind of trying to find who that person is to begin the journey. Then the customer feels like they're behind the 8 ball to go and get the documentation, because they're like, really would have been nice to have a bit of lead time that I was going to have to go to 5 different, my payroll person, my accountant, my benefits admin people. I was going to have to go get all this data together. And it really would have been helpful to have a chance in advance to actually get that on-site visit scheduled, because everybody's really, really busy. And so when you say, again, so there's like nothing sexy about that, but it's just thinking about that consumer experience, even in that B2B context of looking for those moments. So, kind of in general, what we talk to customers about is, think about that last service experience. You were like, well, that was easy. I didn't expect it to be easy, but that was easy. And so what's that analogous moment within your part of the industry? Go find that, because it exists. You just have to do a little bit of that translation.
Bill, did you want to add?
Let's kind of jump in there, David, on this. This is
Yeah,
interesting,
go for it.
like, because yeah, I mean, Meredith identifies some interesting issues, right? And we've 17 years now at Zurich. We've lived through a lot of these issues. I'll tell you, simple stuff, right? In terms of being able to actually, I remember when we first started, the identification of a customer, actually bringing all the pieces of a customer together to actually talk coherently around what we're actually offering, what's the profitability, what are the services. If you can think about a carrier the size of Zurich and the global reach, I mean, we have customers who are in 100 countries, right? So across infinite amount of legacy systems. So to be able to do this, there is an element of fixing, to the extent fixing the back room, right? Being able to invest in terms of data curation, data lakes. There is an infrastructure cost to be able to do this right, because if you don't, you risk. So you're trying to fix customer retention, but if you do it wrong, it becomes an internal nightmare and you risk employee retention, right? But we've seen employee engagement issues in terms of trying to do some of this with rubber bands and Scotch tape and glue. And it works for a bit, but like water, right? Water will seek its level. I mean, the issues will come out if you don't set it up right. And it's going to end up, to Meredith's point, it'll be obvious to the customer, and then all your efforts are for naught, right? So there's an element of having some planning, investment, and getting the foundation correct to be able to start to actually deliver.
Yeah, no, I think both Bill and Meredith share the perspective that ultimately you have to fix the back room before you can ultimately get to these wonderful customer experiences. And I think Meredith had a really keen point that I wanted to draw out or focus on, is that the reason why you got here is not something to be ashamed of. Just because you have 10 policy admin systems and maybe a comparative rater in 3 different divisions that doesn't connect together, it's not a bad thing. It just means that you acquired some great brands, and that's what got you here. And now you have to take what you have and incrementally make improvements. You shouldn't be ashamed of it. And to Bill's point, it's important to think about the employee experience and not push your employees to make so many big changes that their life is miserable. So how can you focus on some of these little changes for existing customers? And my favorite one is just changing a beneficiary or a policyholder. I mean, from me as a policyholder, every time your mortgage gets sold to a servicer, I feel like it's a 2-month journey going back and forth to get that changed. But wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if your insurer was proactive about it and thought about, how can we do this for you? So can appreciate some of these little changes could go a long way towards retention. So I want to get back to some of the questions and really hone in on the focus area on friction. And then as we continue the discussion, we'll go through the solutions and some of the overall insights. So one of the questions that we had about friction was really, what are the methods for finding the customers that actually need and where they're experiencing the most friction? And maybe since Jasmine, you kind of pointed out the intersection between the business units, you might have a perspective on this.
Yeah, I love this question because when it says, where can you find it and where do you get information about the customer? All of our companies, we have a plethora of customer feedback. And so you don't have to go out and say, okay, I need to find it, I don't have it. You just need to identify where it is because you have it, whether it's social media, whether it's complaints coming in, whether it's any type of feedback, whether it's kudos. We have a plethora of customer information coming in, whether it's a call center or some of the independent agents. I like to look at the customer feedback as number one, you want to find out where you're getting customer feedback in your organization, because we're getting it. Just find out and know where you're getting it from. You want to sync all of that information together. You have to sync it up. And to Bill's point, you have to have some data analysis around it to really understand what is the customer saying. You want to look at all of it from one perspective, as opposed to one area looking at their customer feedback, another area looking at their voice of the customer. You can have pockets. And this is something that you don't want to do. Bring all of that customer information into one area, the feedback in, know exactly what your customer is saying, understand it, slice and dice that data every which way that you need to. So then you can see where the pain points and frictions are along the journey. And then again, you're sitting down with a collaborative group of leaders from different areas, and you're sharing the information. We're all in this together to improve the customer's experience. So look at it holistically. That's what we do here, is look at where all of the customer feedback is coming in, and don't just look at it separately. Look at it holistically from that perspective. So it's not that, where is and how do I get it? We have it. Just know where it is and bring it together.
Yeah, and I'd love to jump in on that. I mean, I so agree with you on that, Jasmine. And another piece that I'd say is, if you think about, and I think we're getting the employee experience is the customer experience. You really can't separate them. Another thing that I've done repeatedly with great success is bringing together a cross-functional group of the frontline teams and saying, okay, so first off, do you understand the value of what you're doing? Because if you don't, please go find out, because there's nothing worse than someone doing something and they don't know where it fits. Every once in a while, you find out you can stop doing that. Nobody's using that report anymore. And it's like, nobody told you. But otherwise, to really say the things that you do, what do you look at and say are the things that are high volume, in or out, consistent, you understand they're critical. You sure as heck do not understand today why a human being is still doing it. Because if the employee feels that way, the customer does. The customer is expecting it more consistent, easier, and faster. And so I've done that, and then taught my teams, super high level kind of ROI, to just understand, so how would you kind of build your agile backlog and prioritize where we go first? So they can kind of understand, we don't just go with the first thing that comes to mind. You are trying to understand value. You are trying to understand criticality. You understand it's a quantity thing, but it's also a speed thing. If you get 100 of these, but you have a week to do it, and it takes you an hour, that might be different than 50 things that you have 2 days that take 3 hours, kind of doing that multiplication to figure out where are we going to get value if we think about that automation. And that really gets you back to that really kind of agile, one interaction at a time, where you can experiment and it's a very uncomfortable word for an insurance person, but you can test and learn with your customer to see, internal customer or external, is this better? Did they lean in and like it? Okay, so where do you go next? Where do you go next? And how do you incrementally build that consistent brand experience across that full relationship?
I'd love to jump in too, Dave, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course, Tim, go ahead.
Just from a different perspective, from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective, we have a lot of BRGs. I know companies have ERGs, and I think they, to Meredith's and Jasmine's point, and Bill's, that the employees are customers too. But from a diversity perspective, what do the customers need? So we've gone to our BRGs, whether it's we call our Black African American BRG Kinship Village, and ask what are services and products that are lacking that our customers need. We've gone to the LGBTQ community and said, are there things that we're missing that we should be providing to our customers? And they've given us great feedback, and we've been able to adjust our products, for instance, and add terms like non-binary to our products, which we didn't have before. But if we didn't talk with the BRG, and we do feel like that's going to attract and retain customers that are great customers, that are high-paying customers, that we maybe wouldn't have otherwise. Because I always give this example to my leadership, if the documents that I use today still said colored people, then I probably wouldn't do business with that company, right? We have to understand the nomenclature, all the naming conventions that are inviting to people, inclusive of people as well. And so I think the BRG's work that we've done, and I'm sure other companies too, has really helped the customer experience to understand, the different diverse customers that we have.
Yeah, so,
But I want to add on to that.
yeah,
because,
go ahead, Jasmine.
You know what? Free feedback is right inside our walls. And I think that's the point that we're making. The free feedback and the information that we could get to improve our own customers' experience is right here. It's right here. So I love those.
Yeah, so to really summarize, we got a lot of perspectives on this. I really saw four things. First is, from Jasmine's point, data is coming in from everywhere. You're getting data from your independent agents, your social media, not just negative things, but also kudos. And you really need to create a dashboard and slice and dice the data so you can use it. And I think to build on that, the second point that Meredith brought up is it's a math equation, right? So you have this data, you need to focus on the high volume things, what data is going in and out, and how can you kind of validate or add qualitative information from your frontline teams. And then once you have that, you can do what seems like a dirty word in insurance, test and learn, and see if you get real improvements. And then I think the final point that Tim and Jasmine brought up is that you have a lot you can learn from your actual employees, whether it's different diversity, equity, and inclusion groups. How can you be more inclusive to your policyholders? And the information is in the head of your teams. You just have to go out and ask them. So with that, we'll shift to another question in friction, which was something we started to talk about a little earlier, which was ultimately the use of sensors for preventing claims from ever happening and really helping your policyholders to stay whole for as long as they're customers. So maybe Tim, you could start us off on that. Are you finding that it's difficult for policyholders to adopt sensors? And if so, or if not, what are things that you've seen that help support adoption?
Yeah, it actually has been more difficult than I thought it would be, David, because I feel like the sensors, my brother-in-law uses the sensor for water, and he had something that detected and he was able to save himself from that. There's a Ting device, if anybody's familiar with that. It plugs into your wall and it can detect electrical arcing. And we had our national sales leader actually had the Ting company call him and tell him he had a problem, and it probably saved his life. The fact that more people don't have those because they're not that expensive, it surprises me. So one of the things that we've done is try to communicate via marketing, and then we actually just have some of our risk consultants, back to our risk consultants, kind of show the value add while they're out at the policyholder's house. Because again, they've gained this rapport. And so that's helped to increase adoption of some of those devices because they actually trust the risk control consultant. They're kind of like, oh, this guy probably knows what he's talking about, or lady, and let's go ahead and do that. So those are some of the things that we've done. But I'm surprised that it hasn't gotten out there more. I have both devices, by the way. So,
Bill, anything you would add from an industrial or commercial perspective?
Yeah, I can add from a personal standpoint. I mean, there's some behavioral element to it, right? Because I would agree, Tim. I've debated many times about putting a sensor down by my sump pump in my basement. Yet I haven't been able to justify the $25 or $30 cost of putting it down there. I'm more inclined to roll the dice and look for a $10,000 loss 10 years from now, I guess. But I would say we have, and this it is difficult, right? And I think if you look at our customers and the internal discussions that they have, right, in terms around profitability, margins, the risk manager and the risk management team or the CFO, coming up, to the board or to the CEO and making a recommendation that we're going to invest, thousands and thousands, or some of our, larger customers, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in sensors. It's a tough one because you got to be able to put them in position to actually make that sale, right? So a lot of that is actually arming your customers with the talking points. How do you frame it? How do you sell it to their internal stakeholders to make that investment? Because quite frankly, when you know, the struggle is as a risk manager, you know, I would say the total cost of insurance, you know, insurance is looked as a cost on most of these companies' discussions, right? It's not looked at as an improvement or protection of margin or profit, and being able to arm them and have that conversation and feed them what needs to be told and illustrated at the boardroom level to actually make those investments is really hard, and that's where we focus a lot of our attention. But it's I would say we've been at it a while, right? I mean, I think sensor technology has been progressing, and, you know, I think it first came out, you know, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Now it's getting to a point where I think it's a little more mature, and people are seeing the benefits. So I think it's easier, but still a very challenging conversation when you're talking about, you know, investing and putting an investment up front to see benefit down in the future, or potentially no benefit. The benefit is really loss mitigation, right? And it's hard to illustrate what that looks like to a CEO or a boardroom.
Yeah, I kind of agree as well, Bill. When I think about sensors and customers and adoption, I kind of liken it to, let's go back 20, 25 years ago and an Apple phone. I didn't know I needed it. I didn't know the benefit of it. Now I can't leave home without it, or I didn't mean to use that phrase, but it's something that I really, really want to have, in whether it's any type of cell phone. So I look at these sensors, we have to sell this, and you have to be the company that shows with your customers that I'm always caring for you and I'm looking out for your best interest. It's not that I want you to file a claim, I want to help you to prevent a claim. Whether it's digital adoption for safe driving, get out there and show that we're a company that want you to drive safely. And the same thing for sensors. A lot of times you just have to show that benefit not only to the at the CEO level, but you have to show the benefit to the customers for them to adopt it. And so there may be a ramp up phase, some slow onboarding and slow adoption to it. But once customers understand that, oh, this really does help me, it is going to be cost avoidance for me and better for me, then I think we'll see more adoption of it.
Yeah, and we're seeing the same thing. You know, it's such a challenge of, you know, education and ease. You know, how do you really get it down to that really and it's kind of, you have to, like you said, Jasmine, you may have to come out and like introduce the topic and then come back with another layer and then come back in these bite-sized, you know, communications to get people to kind of digest and process. I mean, you know, thinking and analogous on the healthcare of why is it still to this day such a problem that people don't refill their prescriptions? There's a whole thing that we do for health plans about the importance of reminding people why you take that medication and why you need to prescribe, but it only works if we can say, and we can make it easy to get it refilled. You know, it's just, even when it's somebody's physical well-being on the line, there's just this really interesting unconscious barrier. And studies show across any type of insurance that people don't really understand what they bought, and they don't understand, you know, they don't remember why they picked carrier X. And it's such a great opportunity if you're offering sensors of program. My homeowner's carrier did, and I got the water sensors, and, you know, and I signed up because they made it really easy for me to understand what it was, that they weren't going to be listening to my conversations. And you know, and then it was easy to get set up and all that type of thing and provide feedback, that they made it easy each step along the way. So I didn't give up, because I, knock on wood, have not had the horrific experience of water losses. So I've handled a lot of water loss claims. It wasn't real. That prevention moment wasn't real to me. It was still theoretical, to your point, Bill. And so they really needed to make it super simple for me as even an insurance person to stay engaged, to go the full journey. You know, it's a people thing.
Yeah, no, I can definitely appreciate the education and ease component. I think Jasmine had a good point. You know, like, it might be difficult at first. We're going through this ramp up phase, but eventually it's going to become obvious that this is why you're doing it and what you're doing, and people will have more experiences and shared stories. I know personally, just last week, my air conditioner stopped working. I went to the room where the air conditioner was and saw that the pan was completely filled with water where the condensation was. But fortunately, since I have a new house, the builder had installed a sensor that automatically shut off the air conditioner. So I was saved from having any water claim, and had someone come out and realized that the only problem was that the kind of pipe that brought the water to the condenser pump was just had like sawdust or something in it. So it was a very simple fix, no claim required. And it was all because that sensor existed in the pan and created an automatic shutoff. So at least for me personally, that's a story now that I can tell to people to get this $50, $100 sensor. And you might not be willing to put it on all your pipes or plumbing, but somewhere where you don't necessarily think that it produces a lot of water, but your air conditioner produces a tremendous amount of condensation. I think it was shut off, probably must have been caused over a period of a day. And I had, I think, 3 gallons that I pulled out of my wet dry vac. So just really simple thing with awareness and focusing on that ramp up. So I think while we're focused on this area of friction and sensors, I think the broader perspective of it, which we talked about a little bit in one of the prep calls, was the concept that ultimately there's some inherent tension between the policyholders and the insurers on one side or the other. And I know that Tim, you had done a lot of this research where you went out and saw the policyholders in person, and kind of curious what tools you think exist for insurers to reduce that tension that both feel like they're on opposite sides.
Well, that's a big question, right? And I think data analytics has helped us to kind of get there. One of the things that it's helped us build the trust. We do it with the agent, and then the agent can pass that on to the customer. One of the analytics tools that we have is called an agency insight tool, and it's we've gone through about billions of dollars worth of premium to understand the customer a little bit better, and then provide that agent with what the customer's experiences, and it's helped drive the different products that we have, so that the customers can get what they need. One of them of which is the common effective date that we have now in our product that we didn't have before. So a customer now can have a common effective date and be able to make, to your point, David, you kind of like, how do we get this done and how do we get that done? And now we just have one effective date that can switch everything over. And that was a big pain point for customers that we found out. And it actually retains customers a lot better when they have a common effective date with one carrier. So we got that information to the agent. We built a product. They get that to the customer, and the customers are subsequently a little bit happier and to have a little bit more trust in us as a company.
Yeah, no, I think, like you said, like trust starts with analytics and understanding the relationships and points where you can simplify and make things easier. So one of the other questions that had came in around this area is just, oftentimes you're not directly connected with a customer, especially if you don't have captive agents. So maybe this is for Jasmine, but for the large organizations that leverage independent agencies to sell their products, how do you maintain this overall customer experience, even though independent agencies are not fully within your control?
David, I don't know how you knew this, but I wanted that question. The way you do it is you include them, plain and simple. You include them in the customer experience, and you see your agencies, the independent agencies, as your customers. They are also a customer. So if you see them as a customer, then you also want to have feedback from the agent regarding how can we make it easy for you to service our customers. And you're there, similar to what Tim has. We have systems and capabilities in place where we work with our agencies, provide feedback and information. It's a two-way street back and forth, and we listen to them. So include them. If we're sending anything out for customers to the end customer, they know about it. So you don't see them as something that's totally separate from the company, you see them as a customer as well to the company, and you embrace and you include them in every in the conversations regarding the customer experience, and make sure that their experience is just as effortless and reassuring and personal that we want for our customers as well.
Yeah, that's so spot on, Jasmine, because we kind of talk about customer experience, because there's so many key stakeholders in that relationship, and agents and brokers are critical, and they are the gift that can keep on giving and the gift that can take away, and it's ease of doing business. And if they're independent, they have options. And so thinking about, and to your point, when we're talking with carriers about agent written business and the claim journey, and again, I lived this in my previous life where the agent was inextricably involved in the entire claim journey, from first reporting to being the conduit back and forth to the customer and saying, the problem solving 5 whys, kind of why is that? And often it came down to, and again, I lived this, because it's the only way that they believe that they can understand what's going on with their customer, and that's really critical to them. And so we talk about, what you described is, so how about you offer the automated way, anytime you're interacting with the customer, they get a copy, not after the fact, but same time. So they know every time there's been something asked of the customer, shared with the customer, provided to the customer, they know exactly. So if the customer has a reaction, positive or not, they're not surprised by it. And as well as they can jump right in and provide feedback to the carrier if there's something that they don't understand, they're concerned, they didn't like the language, they're worried about how long is this taking, why isn't this resolved by now. You really enable that agent or that broker to stay as frontline as they'd like to be, or to step back if they only want to be engaged on certain types of interactions.
Bill, are there any perspectives that you would add from commercial account perspective, where maybe some of these relationships with the agents, the renewal time might be a multiple month process?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, we have stewardship meetings with all of our customers and brokers, 120, 150 days out from every renewal, right? So it's a constant discussion and dialogue between the customer, the broker, us. So there's that. But we also have, we meet, we have customer councils with our largest key customers. Are more sophisticated. So learning what they need, working with them, trying beta solutions, throwing back and forth ideas, and then taking what works with them and then being able to scale it, for similar customers, down in terms of size and maybe less sophisticated or complex. But we use our largest and brightest, to help identify what the needs are of that customer, that type of customer, and then try to scale it. So, but yeah, no, it's not a one-time conversation. It's an everlasting relationship, and a constant sharing back and forth.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think overall we've had this theme that the customer is broader than just your policyholder. In this case, the independent agent is also a form of a customer, and depending on your client's level of sophistication, you can either dive in and really work and do things that would be beta and new to them, or you can dial back out and kind of leave them in the way that they want to work, whether it's the agent being more involved in claims or less involved in claims, depending on the types of relationships you have. So that's pretty much all the time that we have for questions. So I want to thank each of our panelists for participating, Tim, Bill, Jasmine, and Meredith. I'm going to just do a quick summary wrap up, and then we'll leave you to go on your way. There were really 4 big insights that I got from our conversation today. From Tim, really, I think you brought up the point that when you talk about inspection, one of these primary friction points is what you have to do with the customers. but you can turn that around with providing a premium experience to really keep a customer for life. From Meredith, what I really saw was what you find as high value is a lot of times unsexy, and you can save something like 35% by just giving updates for status on your calls that are coming into your call center. From Bill, I think one thing that really stuck in my mind is how do you reduce the total cost of insurance for your clients? So even though it might feel like you're pulling away business from yourself, that's what cements you in with your client, is when you're thinking holistically in the same way that they think from a P&L perspective on optimizing their costs. And if you can be aligned, there's a lot of opportunity there. And then I think from Jasmine, it's really extend the value chain of what the definition of your customers are. It's also the associates within your company, it's your independent agents. And the more you can do to improve their experience, the more that your policyholders will get that positive reinforcement. So those are the insights that I've found. And I think one other thing probably Lucy would want me to mention is that the next in-person Reuters event coming up is September 13th and 14th in Toronto. It's called The Future of Insurance Canada. So I recommend you guys all check it out, and look forward to seeing you in the next webinar or in-person Reuters event. Thanks, everyone.